You ever look back at a moment and wish you could press pause? Not rewind. Not erase. Just pause so you could sit inside it and figure out what the hell was really happening before it changed everything? Because I've got one of those moments. And it started with something so small it didn't even feel like a moment at the time. A look. Not a long one. Not a creepy one. Just a moment of eye contact that held a little too long. Long enough to notice something in it. I laughed it off. Told myself I imagined it. We all see things when we're lonely. And I was lonely, the kind of lonely that doesn't scream or cry. It just sits quietly in the same house with someone who stopped seeing you years ago. My husband? He was always tired. Always working. Always somewhere else, even when he was sitting right there. And me? I kept the house running. Smiled at the neighbors. Cooked dinner. Played my part. Until one day, I stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. Then my nephew moved in. Now before your mind goes racing, let me explain. He's my sister's son. 23. Smart. Gentle. Just lost his mom in a car accident last year. Came to stay with us while getting back on his feet. He needed a place. I needed some company. I thought, what harm could that do? He was sweet. Respectful. The kind that opens doors and notices when you cut your hair. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be noticed. And that's how it started. Not with a plan. Not with a fantasy. Just with someone asking how I was doing and actually waiting for the answer. It's crazy, isn't it? How a simple question can make your chest tighten and your throat catch. Because it's been so long since anyone asked you and actually meant it. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was something quieter, but just as dangerous. It was comfort. And comfort, when you've been starving for it long enough, can feel like salvation. Even when it isn't. Even when it's a setup for something you won't be able to take back. I didn't fall into anything all at once. It was slow. A glance here. A moment there. A shared laugh over breakfast. A silence that felt too warm for family. And in my head, I kept saying, he's just trying to help. That's all this is. Just a sweet boy helping his aunt. But in my chest was already warning me. It was whispering, this kind of help doesn't come without a cost. And still, I didn't stop it. Not because I was weak, but because I was human. A woman aching to feel alive again. What happened next? I'll tell you. But just know this story doesn't have neat edges. It doesn't wrap up with a bow. It's messy, raw, the kind of story that lives in the corners of your mind and makes you ask questions you're not ready to answer. Call to action, gently woven in so, if you've ever stood at a line, knowing you shouldn't cross it, but still took that step, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the heart behind them. And believe me, you won't want to miss what comes next. I was a wife, at least on paper. But paper can't hold warmth. And in the mirror, I saw something fading, a woman whose name hadn't been spoken with softness in years. Not by him. My husband. He used to smile with his eyes. Now he barely looked at me. When he did, it was out of habit, like checking the clock or turning off the lights. He'd kiss my cheek in the mornings sometimes. Say, thanks for dinner without tasting it. His presence filled the room, but it never touched me. He was loyal, I suppose. He paid the bills, kept the yard trimmed. He showed up to family events. But when it came to me, he was somewhere else. Emotionally. I lived in a museum. Everything still looked intact, but there was dust on everything that used to matter. Then Derek moved in. 23. My sister's only boy. He lost her in a wreck last winter. Ice on the road, no chance to break. After the funeral, we stayed in touch. A few calls. Some check-ins. Then he asked if he could move in for a while sorting out college transfers. We said yes. We had the space. And truthfully, I needed the noise. He arrived with 2 bags and tired eyes. Polite. Gentle. The kind of young man who asks before pouring himself a glass of water. The the kind who takes his shoes off at the door. He called me ma'am at first. That made me smile and ache all at once. He wasn't loud. He moved through the house quietly, like someone taught to never be a burden. He'd sit at the kitchen counter while I cooked, offering to chop or stir or clean. I told myself it was nothing. Just a respectful young man. But even then, something in the air had shifted. He asked questions, not big ones. Just, how was your day? What do you like to do when you're alone? When was the last time you did something just for you? I didn't have answers. No one had asked me those things in years. And the house, it changed too. It didn't feel so hollow. The silence wasn't so sharp. There were moments when I'd hear him humming down the hallway, and I'd pause just to feel it. Just to feel something moving in this place again. I found myself lingering in the mornings. Wearing lipstick again. Putting on earrings even when I wasn't leaving the house. My husband didn't notice. But Derek did. He'd say, "That color looks nice on you." Or, "You always make the kitchen smell like home." And I'd laugh. Tuck the hair behind my ear. Pretend it didn't mean more than it should. But deep down, I felt it. He wasn't trying. That was the problem. He wasn't trying to charm me. He wasn't even aware of the warmth he gave off. And maybe that's why it slipped past my defenses. Maybe that's why it started to matter. I didn't know it then, but something was already taking root. Quietly, softly, in the cracks of my loneliness. And once something starts to bloom there, it's only a matter of time before it finds the light. I should have stopped it, but I didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, someone saw me. And that can be more dangerous than desire itself. It started small, like most things that change everything. I was in the kitchen one evening, trying to lift a box of old cookbooks off the top shelf. It slipped, tumbled halfway down before I caught it awkwardly against my chest. And then he was just there. Derek. Quiet, like always. I hadn't even heard him come in. He reached out to steady the box, and in doing that, his hand brushed over mine. Held it, really. Just for a second. Long enough for me to feel it. Not just the touch, but the warmth behind it. He looked at me. Not startled. Not apologetic. Just soft. Present. Then he smiled. And something inside me pulled tight. I laughed. Nervous. A little too high-pitched. Try to turn it into a joke, something like, "Guess I'm not as strong as I thought." But my voice sounded strange to my own ears. He stayed there a moment longer than he needed to, then nodded. Said, "Let me know next time. I'll help." And he walked out like nothing had happened. But I stood there, still holding the box, heart beating like I'd run up a flight of stairs. It was nothing. Or maybe it wasn't. I kept telling myself it was harmless. Politeness. Gratitude. But I started noticing more. Or maybe I just started admitting what I already saw. The way his eyes held mine a breath longer than they should. The way I found myself waiting to hear his footsteps in the hallway. The way my body tensed, not from fear, but from something else, every time we were alone in a room together. A few days later, I was painting the guest room. Husband was out, as usual. Derek passed by, asked if I needed help. I said sure. He climbed the ladder, reached the corners I couldn't. We played music. Talked about nothing. Paint got on my shirt. Somehow I got a smudge on his cheek. He wiped it with the back of his hand, grinning. I laughed. Then a flick of paint landed on my face. I gasped, mock offended. He held up both hands in surrender. And I grabbed a brush and flicked back at him. We were both laughing now. Loud, full. Paint on his arms. On my jeans. On the floor. Then he reached forward, gently, and wiped a streak of blue from my cheek with his thumb. I froze. Not because it hurt. Not because I was scared. But because everything around us stopped. There was silence. Not the absence of sound, but a heavy kind. The kind that says, this moment matters. His hand lingered. Not long, but long enough to ask a question neither of us said out loud. I pulled away first, smiled again. Too fast. Too wide. Said something like, "We're a mess, huh?" He nodded. Didn't say a word. We cleaned up. Took our time. But I couldn't meet his eyes after that. Because I knew. That was the first night I didn't sleep beside my husband, even though we were both in bed. Every night. I sat beside a man who didn't see me and walked past a boy who did. And that's where it started to hurt the most. Not because I didn't know it was wrong. I knew. But knowing didn't stop the ache. It was the little things. The way Derek asked how I slept in the morning. The way he waited for my answers. The way he smiled when I walked into the room, like my presence actually meant something. My husband didn't do that anymore. He hadn't in years. We shared a bed, but not warmth. We shared a house, but not a life. And slowly, that gap between duty and desire became unbearable. I tried to ignore it. Tried to talk myself down. He's family, I'd say. He's young. He's just being nice. But every time I said that, my chest tightened a little more. Because deep down, I knew I didn't want him to stop being nice. I started noticing him everywhere. How he smelled like cedar and clean laundry. How he hummed softly when he thought no one was listening. How he looked at me not like I was broken, but like I was still there. And I hadn't felt that in so long. Sometimes, I'd hear him laughing in the other room, and I'd stop what I was doing, just to feel that sound echo through the house. I caught myself dressing differently, fixing my hair, lingering in the mirror, wondering what he saw when he looked at me. I felt ridiculous, embarrassed, old, but I also felt alive. And that was the problem. It was like discovering breath in a place you'd already learned to suffocate in. And once you feel that again, you don't forget it. My journal pages filled up faster than usual. Lines scrawled in the dark when I couldn't sleep. He makes me feel seen. I shouldn't let this grow. But what if I already have? What am I really missing? Is it love I want? Or just someone to ask if I'm okay? I'd close the journal, tuck it under my pillow, lay beside a man who'd roll over without a word, and think about the boy down the hall who told me I looked beautiful when I wore yellow. Was it loneliness? Or was I chasing something I never had to begin with? I didn't know. Maybe I still don't. All I knew was that the line between right and wrong was starting to blur. Not because I crossed it, but because my heart already had. It crept in not like a fire, but like fog. Soft, slow, filling the space between what we felt and what we dared to say. It started with a movie night. A simple, ordinary thing. My husband had left again. Work trip. Same excuses, same silence. I made popcorn. Derek chose the movie. We sat on opposite sides of the couch, at first. But somewhere between the second act and the closing credits, we shifted. Not with intention. Not all at once. Just, slowly. Our elbows touched. Then our knees. At one point, my hand slipped from the blanket and brushed his. I could have pulled away. Should have. But I didn't. And neither did he. We sat there, still. Hands barely touching, hearts beating loud enough to hear in the silence between scenes. The movie ended, but neither of us moved. It was him who broke it. A soft goodnight before heading down the hall. I couldn't answer. My mouth had forgotten how. The next day, I wore a dress I hadn't touched in years. Yellow. Fitted at the waist. He walked into the kitchen, stopped mid-sentence. "You look beautiful in that," he said. Just like that. Not flirtatious. Not playful. Just true. I smiled longer than I should have. And I hated myself for how much I needed to hear it. Later that week, I was tidying the guest room. He'd left a notebook on the nightstand. The cover was cracked. Worn. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside, poems. Short, messy, raw. One of them stopped me. She wears sadness like perfume, faint to others, but the closer you stand, the more it lingers. He didn't say it was about me. He didn't have to. I closed the book, put it back, walked out of that room like it was on fire. After that, I started avoiding his eyes. Couldn't trust what mine might say in return. But silence carries weight. And every time we passed each other, in the hallway, the kitchen, the living room, it hung heavy between us. Every brush of skin felt electric. Every glance held breath we didn't dare release. Even breathing near him felt wrong and addicting. One night, I was washing dishes. He came up behind me, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel. I turned. He looked down, held my gaze just long enough to make my knees falter. Neither of us said a word. I left the kitchen with soap still on my hands. But nothing compared to what came next. Because then came the storm. Heavy rain. Wind that howled like it was grieving something. And with it, the lights went out. The house went still. No hum from the fridge. No glow from the hallway nightlight. Just darkness. And him. And me. Alone in the quiet. A match flared in my hand, lighting a single candle. His face flickered in the glow. He looked different in the dark, older. Sadder. Closer. And that's when everything began to change. The rain was loud. Not soft and rhythmic like it sometimes is. This was the kind that beats against windows like it's trying to get in. The power had gone out maybe 15 minutes earlier. I lit candles. The kitchen filled with shadows dancing across the walls. The whole house felt suspended, like time was holding its breath. Then I heard his steps. Derek walked in slowly, wrapped in a gray blanket that hung off his shoulders like something ancient and soft. He looked tired, but calm. Our eyes met. He said nothing at first, just looked at the candle on the counter, then at me. I figured you might not want to sit alone, he said. I nodded. He sat across from me. The rain kept pouring. The wind moaned around the house. We talked. Nothing important. Stories about childhood. About my sister. About music he liked, foods he missed. We laughed. Quietly. But there was something underneath every word. A pressure. A current pulling us both somewhere we hadn't said out loud. I looked at him differently that night. Or maybe I finally allowed myself to see what had been there all along. He was watching me. Not with hunger. Not with lust. With something softer. Something more dangerous. I poured tea. His hands brushed mine when he took the mug. Neither of us flinched. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. He stared at me for a second. Long enough for me to know something was about to shift. Then he leaned in. Not fast. Not hesitant either. Just certain. And I didn't move. I didn't stop him. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. His lips touched mine, soft, warm, unsure for a second, like he was waiting for me to pull away. But I didn't, because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my marriage, or morals, or the weight of consequences. I was thinking about how long it had been since someone touched me like I was still worth touching. He kissed me, and I let him. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't messy. It was slow, and it shattered something inside me. His hands found my waist. My fingers grazed his jaw. There was a sound in my throat I didn't recognize, like grief and longing had finally found their voice. We didn't say anything. There were no words left that could make it less real. Then, a sound. A knock. Not loud, but sharp. 3 taps. Then silence. My heart stopped. I looked at him. His face had changed. His body went still. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. I didn't hear the front door. But he did. The morning after was quiet. Not peaceful. Not still. Just quiet in that heavy, suffocating way. I woke before the sun. Sat on the edge of the bed. Listened to my husband breathe beside me like nothing had changed. Like the walls hadn't shifted. Like I hadn't. I made coffee. Set out his usual mug. Burned the toast a little. He walked in, half awake. Scratched his neck. Asked, "Everything okay?" I smiled, nodded. He didn't look twice. And Derek, he didn't come to breakfast. Didn't text. Didn't hum down the hall like he used to. I didn't seek him out. I couldn't. Every part of me was too loud, too raw, too aware of the space I now carried inside myself. Later that day, I passed him in the hallway. He was holding a box, a duffel bag at his feet. "I'm heading out early," he said. Didn't explain why. I didn't ask. I think that was the first lie between us that we both agreed to. We never spoke of it. Not once. Not directly. But it followed us. Like a scent you can't wash out of your clothes. Like music still echoing after the record stopped spinning. The house felt different after he left. Like a vacuum had opened, and everything else got pulled just slightly out of place. I still set the table for 3 sometimes. By accident. Out of muscle memory. Then, I'd quietly put the extra plate back. I didn't cry. Not then. But there was a weight behind my eyes, like tears waiting for permission. My husband went on like always. Talking about bills, traffic, dinner plans. But something in me had snapped. I used to feel invisible. Now I felt exposed even when I was alone. Because now I wasn't just unseen. I was known. Someone had looked beneath the surface, seen the cracks, and touched them anyway. And now every room I entered felt like it knew. Every chair, every mirror, every shadow in the corners. They all remembered what I did, even if no one else did. And that silence, the one I'd lived in for years, was suddenly unbearable. Because once you hear your name in a voice that means it, you can't unhear it. Even if it was only once. I sit with it now, not the moment, but the aftermath. Not the kiss, not the touch, but the silence that came after. The kind of silence that wraps itself around your throat and calls itself consequence. I don't miss the moment. I miss who I thought I was before it. Before I let need dress up as love. Before I let silence be mistaken for peace. Before I let my heart whisper a lie so soft, I mistook it for truth. People talk about betrayal like it's loud. Like it kicks down the door and leaves everything shattered. But mine was quiet. It tiptoed in with bare feet and asked if I was okay. And I let it stay. I thought I was starving for affection. Maybe I was. But looking back now, maybe it wasn't just about being touched. Maybe it was about being known. Seen. Noticed. Even if it was by the wrong eyes. Maybe I was desperate to feel like I mattered. Even for one night. But what do you do when the thing that makes you feel alive also poisons the part of you that wants to live with yourself afterward? What do you do when your own heart becomes the stranger in the room? I tried to forgive myself. Still trying. But every time I do, I hear his voice, not the one who kissed me, the one who never noticed me at all. The one I vowed to. The one I shared a name with. And I wonder, was it betrayal? Or desperation wearing perfume and pretending to be grace? Was I wrong for needing more? Or just human for reaching out when it finally came near? There are no neat answers. No ribbon to tie around what's already been unraveled. Only the truth. And the ache it leaves behind. Because once you cross that line, even once, you start seeing it everywhere. And the worst part? You never quite know who you are on the other side. Have you ever let something happen, not because you truly wanted it, but because you didn't know how to say no to the silence inside you? That kind of silence, it doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It just waits. And when someone finally sees you, really sees you, that silence feels like it's cracking open. You tell yourself it's innocent. You tell yourself you're just being polite. You tell yourself you're strong enough to stop it, until you don't. And afterward, you sit with yourself and realize the worst part wasn't what happened. It's that a part of you needed it. Maybe you understand. Maybe you've stood in a moment that was far too quiet and let something slip through the cracks because it felt like the only thing real in a life full of numb. So I have to ask, was this betrayal? Or something more complicated? Tell me in the comments, please. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know someone out there understands what it means to ache for something you know you can't have. And if stories like this stir your soul, If they make you pause, make you feel, make you look at your own life just a little differently, like this video and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Desire doesn't knock on your door wearing warning signs. It doesn't shout. It doesn't come in fire or fury. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it looks like kindness. Sometimes it smiles in the form of someone just trying to help. And sometimes, it's the mirror you refuse to look into. Not because of what you'll see, but because of what you'll feel. Because deep down, you know that some lines, once crossed, don't leave footprints. They leave echoes. If this story stays with you, if it lingers in your chest, if it makes you stare a little longer at your own reflection, maybe it's because the line between comfort and chaos is thinner than we think. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one touch, one whisper of help to change everything.